I'm going to talk about Khartoum. This is supposedly the Hand of Destiny series, mini system, whatever. Um, this is one of those decision games, mini games that I got. Got a bunch more that aren't mini games, but I'm like, hey, these are kind of small and cool to handle. And I've got a kind of a fondness for that size. Out of the three I've played, this is the one that I've liked the best. This is kind of weird because Campaigns of Montrose, not necessarily respected the best. The Bayonet and Saber or whatever was kind of cool. Like, that has really neat factors to it. But anyway, Campaigns of Montrose, which is officially like on BGG, it's considered part of the same system, even though it doesn't have this mini system rules. It uses much of the same rules. It kind of fell a little flat with me. That mainly had to do with the way the victory conditions worked at the end of that one. This one solves that problem as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't a problem with the system as a whole. It was a problem with that particular game had some really weird victory conditions that like made you do some gamey stuff that I don't like. Kind of like Churchill has some weird victory conditions, right? These were a little bit more to do with what gets unleashed when you do certain things, and that you might not be in a position as the royalists to to be able to win fights anymore. So you want to keep like certain fights hidden behind your lines, where and not just take them early in the game. And it felt counterintuitive, and I talked about that already. The big difference here, well, let's talk about components, because I don't want to just make this this isn't Montrose because of this type of thing. So, but yeah, a nice little point-to-point map, a lot of information on it. Combat results tables for both players facing them, terrain keys facing both players. The terrain effects chart is not, but there's not a hell of a lot to it. It actually could probably face the Empire player and be just as good, because the Mahdiist player has very little need for it except to know what the Empire player can't do. The counters, mostly okay. I had a little bit of color distinguishing problems between the blue and green. That's just me. They aren't that close in this. I just have real problems where even when they're not all that close, yes, I can tell the difference, but it takes a little bit more work than I would like. We'll get to the cards in a moment. The rules. The rules were bad in this one. There was stuff that's omitted, stuff that gave you exactly contradictory results to, or implications to what was intended, at least as far as responses to questions that were put on CSW had to do with. There were a number of cases where it's like, yeah, what is this? Like some of the counters, it's hard to tell what's a leader and what's not. And I still don't honestly know the answer to that. I think Gordon and Mahdi are the only leaders because they don't have a symbol on the front that's the same as anything else. But there's something very weird about that, because the Mahdi has like essentially a tribal force. So, Gordon is just like him, his staff officers, and a small guard. The Mahdi should not be able to operate as swiftly as if he were alone, Anyway, there were a lot of issues with the rules for such a small rule set. 4 pages in the main system, 2 here, and like a significant portion of these rules are undermining or changing the rules from the standard system, which is to me kind of like, yeah, you shouldn't have probably written it into the standard system. The game only has five, or the system only has 5 games in it. One of those is Campaigns of Montrose, which does not include these system rules and is different, significantly different in a number of different ways. Yes, it could have all been handled by retracting and changing stuff. Some of it may not have been a big deal, but yeah. So at most, there's 3 other games that actually use these rules. The cards, well, it's why it's called Hand of Destiny, right? You flip a card over, and in Montrose, those cards are only events. Here, under the mini-system rules, they have a number of special things. They include recruiting, what troops you get, which was handled by die rolls in Montrose, which units can move on any given turn, and how far they can move. And then they have a sort of an event special effect. Not in all cases. And so, you can't, there's not even the possibility, like in Montrose, I might forget to draw a card, and I'd be like, oh, fuck, I forgot to draw one. Here, you can't even play without drawing a card, because you can't move your units without a card. And it actually generates the movement point allowances for your units and which units are allowed to move, which is all very interesting. The core is similar to the core in Montrose. It's an I go, you go, but the cards do add a little fillip to that. A buckets of dice combat system. And in this particular one, it's you're looking to control specific specific locations on the point-to-point map. The Mahdaists win if they can take 3 positions that are kind of keyed to the imperial hopes. I wanted to say position, but I've said that enough. In the Sudan, and if they can do that, they get an automatic victory. I believe it was if all of the Mahdist, I may be confusing this with the Germantown one, if all the Mahdist forces are knocked off the map, I think you get, no, because the Mahdi will always come back, so yeah. And that's not necessarily meant to express any kind of religious significance there. It's that this revolt, would have coalesced around someone else, I guess, or something like that. I'm not sure how believable that is. Now, you have special units in terms of commands that come in at once based on the cards for the Brits. The other units kind of come in just based on the cards, but just as replacements or reinforcements, as it were. And that was one of the places where the rules failed to convey what was actually meant. Even though it was what I sort of naturally inclined towards, but the rules actually explicitly are worded in a way where no, that wouldn't be the case. Like what the interpretation that they put was not the case, but it is what you intuitively want to do. There are a lot of special rules on here. There were a fair amount in Montrose, a fair amount in the Germantown game as well that I played. These feel like, they're not trying to be a bare bones Napoleon at Waterloo type of game, okay? And to some extent, I kind of like that. It's also frustrating because it's harder to learn and remember when there's just a whole bunch of very chromey type rules in there, I think the biggest thing about this one, the base game system is kind of like, okay, that's an all right buckets of dice type game. The cards add an interesting little element. The event cards in Montrose a lot less. This one, with using it for the movement factors and whatnot, there's something kind of cool about that. Although the fact that it's all your units and that you can, kind of figure out how to coordinate them all is not as cool. It doesn't give that kind of random movement that I feel applies very well to operations in this time period, which is that you can't count on things getting, coordinating as well as you think they should, getting to where they want to go. You have basically no communications technology, Here we're talking 1880s. You would have telegraph, but you don't have it in the Sudan, as far as I know. And if you did, it would get cut. Like enemies would disrupt your communications. I'm having a hard time getting this back in the bag. It is one of the problems. The bags are that they come in are really tight fits, but I'm kind of in need of doing that. Although it doesn't have to not rep, I guess. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time getting it into this one. This is the worst I think I've had. Anyway, the victory conditions for this one were pretty reasonable. You could play the game without having too much thought about them. It's not going to interfere too much with, basic strategic ideas. Although late in the game, you are going to have to, count your victory point hexes and try to optimize what you can get to. I don't know, that doesn't bother me the way that the Montrose one did. It does really confuse me that, it's part of the same system. Essentially what I think happened was Montrose was being developed in parallel with this, and that there was a lot of bouncing around. Miranda's involved in both of them, although Montrose had a different designer as well. So I think that, the ideas Miranda was coming up for this were kind of leaking into there. And in that sense, it is sort of the same system, but one of the key places where it's different is that this game utilizes the cards for reinforcements and movement, whereas Montrose used die rolls for your reinforcement units, and movement was just the movement factors, like a normal war game would be. I like anything this size, not these days, but 30 years ago, I would bring a game this size to the coffee shop where I could sit and smoke and drink coffee and enjoy myself. I guess you could still play games and drink coffee, but you can't smoke anywhere anymore. So anyway, had sort of my enjoyment with this one, and it provided a nice break in terms of the Avec Infinite Regret, which I have one more scenario to do, and then I have to figure out something that I'm going to play. I think I know what it is, but I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, this was the top of the line so far that I've seen. It's not a fantastic game. It's not offering anything that's amazing to the hobby or anything, but it's a good, solid game. And I've got to say, I'm cool with that, especially for something that comes in such a small package. I guess I'll talk a little bit about, since I stressed so much during play, I managed to get, this is just personal shit, but I managed to find the email of the guy who originally sent me materials, and I asked if he could resend them. We'll see if that resolves my issue at all. Because they're, I tried to deal with telephones, and that's just too fucking complicated for me. And the other choice is go around hunting around Eugene with this list of where payphones might still be, and see if I can find one. What really shocked me is there are none apparently at the university. I know there used to be, but that was a long time ago. Anyway, up it goes. This was a pleasant surprise.